All right, stop the presses. 2 episodes in a row.
Look at us, bro.
Had to after,
The people have spoken and we
had,
listened.
had to after the feedback.
Yeah, it was, dude, I'm telling you what, man, it feels amazing to like the average money community and obviously the push through community too, but we went back to the average money just because it's the OG name. It's been around for years and man, it's cool to be back. I told Brad, I was like, I want to at least commit to bi-weekly episodes. Because like Brad and I's schedules are different. It's tough to do this, but I want to at least commit because to see the messages that we've received over the past week, literally one of the best feelings.
Yeah.
Like to know that people are taking initiative with their money and literally changing their family's financial future is absolutely such a like it's such a good feeling to me that I feel like how do I say this? I'm what's the word I'm looking for? I'm selfishly wanting more of that. Like I want more people to kill it that are listening to this podcast because it's literally the most rewarding feeling in the world.
And I mean, I said in the discourse, I'm like, man, I feel like an asshole. Like I didn't realize how many people are actually like listening and not only listening but paying attention.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always thought selfishly it was just us. Like I thought it was us just being buddies and needing a phone call just to chat out things. But like, yeah, man, we were helping some people out, and it like for that reason, it's like granted, I still love just to chat with you or whatever, and that's great, but now with that like understanding of like, man, when these people are telling us to make episodes and get back into this thing, it wasn't because they like the jokes. Like they were there because it was helping them and it was, it was making their lives better.
Yeah. Well,
So I
we got
think so today, I think what we talked about was let's go back to basics and we talked about in the last episode how, we've grown and we're seeing the fruits of our long-term labor. And I think now in an evolving economic situation and politics and all these things, like when we started in 2020, 4 years ago, can you believe it's been that long?
that's nuts.
I'm curious, or I think people might be curious to hear how our investing and our outlooks on debt and things like that, how they might have changed and how they've been similar. And I definitely want to have that conversation. And as well as, we found out like these voicemails were big. Maybe we have to bring back the voicemail link and maybe we have to let people call in and share even more of their journey and share the things that they're doing, because that's most of the feedback we got. Like, hey, I was on episode this, or I put this voicemail in. And
Yeah.
I think that also makes it easy for us because where we're at and been doing it so long, sometimes we forget those days of the grind and, those days of feeling like you're never going to be able to get out of debt, or that feeling of like, I'm never going to be able to buy a home. And I think if we bring back some voicemails and we can and talk about and get through those things as well, I think that might be pretty good.
Yeah, it would be cool is to actually get some people like on a call live,
Mm-hmm.
like for the show, like just like a 20-minute segment of people kind of telling their financial story,
Yeah.
where they're going, what they've done, where they've been, stuff like that. I like that's the stuff I like to hear too, like Dave Ramsey type stuff. Like I used to always get so motivated when I hear other people killing it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the voicemails and maybe figuring out a way to have people come like live on the show, call in or something like that would be pretty sweet.
So I wrote down like a couple of things, and you mentioned Dave Ramsey. I don't think we need to like remake the baby steps here, but
Yeah.
I mean it's definitely a foundation of like
That's
let's
how you and I got started.
of course, and I am still very for Dave Ramsey with
Yeah.
with some minor changes,
Right.
but what's our position on like consumer debt? Has that changed?
No,
Or
I mean, no.
because I think one thing that's mind blowing for me as far as debt's concerned is I was always told by Dave Ramsey and people that when you become debt free, you are going to live in a reality that you never thought was possible, and you never really truly understood the impact of debt. And I don't mean the people that are buried in debt to the point where they don't like they can't breathe. I'm not, because I mean I think that's a very small percentage of people and they know that they're screwed. I think, and this is kind of where I was, the people that are holding on to debt and still can pay the bills pretty easily. Like their debt is just like what they've thought or has become just an automatic payment in their life. It's
I'm always
become
going to have a car payment.
it's
You
going
hear
to
that all the
become
time.
an extra tax. Exactly. And I think the people that I'm trying to reach when I say things like this are those people. Are the people that are just accepting their student loan payments? Are people accepting their car payments? Accepting the fact that they need to have a really, really big iPhone and things like that?
But I want to say something real
Go.
quick on I know what you meant, but I want to say make sure if there is somebody listening out there who is drowning in debt and doesn't feel like they're going to make it, I want them to know too that there is an opportunity for you to get ahead. Now their direction and getting there is going to be a little bit harder,
Right.
a little bit more sacrifice, but it can be done. And that's the stuff we'll talk about in future episodes and now and all that stuff too.
Yeah, no, and what I'm going to say, I think will help and apply to those people
Yeah.
as well. But I guess the point I was trying to make, and thank you for clearing that up, was there are people that I feel like won't listen to this message because they don't think that they're screwed by debt. They just
got
have debt and they're okay. The people that are drowning know they're screwed and they're going to listen to what we have to say right now. It's those people that are just have our standard debts that don't realize. And
Well,
when
they're
I
probably not searching for the show then.
yeah, exactly. Well, maybe they're here for the jokes. Who knows?
That's true. Yeah,
Maybe
your
they're-
jokes.
Like my students that don't drop the class and they're failing. I say, man, what are you
Okay.
here for? What are you here for the jokes? I don't know what you're still doing here. But I will say now, going back to like I heard how life would change before.
Mhm.
I've been debt free now since September of 2019, and it's so true. You live in a reality that you just can't comprehend. And the longer it goes on, the more you see people and you're like, dude, if you would just get rid of that payment, your life would be so much different.
It's literally a pay raise. Like, that's how I always account it as. Like, you're literally giving yourself a pay raise when you pay off debts. Because if you have let's say you have a $500 car payment, right?
Right.
And then you go and pay off that car payment. You still have the car in the garage, but now you have an extra $500 every single month. That's not going towards a car payment. Now you get to do whatever you want with that. Now you can go blow it.
Yeah.
You can save it up to take the family on a nice vacation at the end of the year, or throw it in your taxable brokerage account and watch that puppy grow over the years. Like, there's so many things you can do with that disposable income that's no longer going towards debt. That was my biggest
Right.
drive. Like,
Yeah.
that was my biggest goal. And like, sometimes you take the people who are debt snowball because I need to pay off the debts and get that motivation, or then you have the debt avalanche because they know they're taking the math route and doing the interest rate. But for me, I was like, I want that freaking money back. Like, I want the money back as a raise to myself to know that I can go do whatever I want with it to, in return, go grow my wealth and maybe have a little bit more fun in life.
My minimum debt payments, when I had my debt, was $3,000 a month. I remember saying to Tara,
Holy shit.
yeah, I remember saying to Tara, could you imagine
Oh,
if we could invest 3,000? Tara,
Yes.
we would be rich. Well, shit, we're doing pretty damn good. and we're with pay raises and things like that and
I was
lowering
gonna
our
say, your
cost of
guys'
living. Otherwise,
incomes, your all's income's pretty good for
yeah, yes, we have pretty good incomes. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, so we're saving roughly, I think, $10,000 a month we're investing, which is a lot.
Jesus.
Like, I think
That's a lot.
our joint income is close to $300,000.
Okay.
And so, but like, if you think about it as a percentage, like take that 10% or the $10,000 of a $300,000 income, you can see where it's a lot, but it's not out of the ordinary for what somebody can do is percentage wise.
Mhm.
But it's true. Like and even if we had that $3,000, we would say things like, even if we just invested $1,500, could you imagine
Yeah.
if we just had $1,500
Well-
we could spend on whatever and it's true.
So let me ask you this then, Brad. Hang
Yeah.
on. Let me ask you this. So now let's say we got a listener out there and they're like, oh, nice for you to have the nice income. No wonder you can pay off your debts. How do you answer that?
I work my ass off.
Yep.
I work my fucking ass off.
Yeah, there's
And
a lot of people that make 300,000 that are living paycheck to paycheck.
I will never apologize for my work ethic and I will never apologize for my income. Nobody said, here you go.
Yep.
Nobody. And that's another thing Dave Ramsey said. A lot of people that are doing, because it's kind of like when your parents buy you a car when you're a kid, you don't really appreciate as much as like the beater that you bought yourself because you bought it yourself and it's yours, I won't apologize for my income because nobody said, here's your income. Man, I tried to grow businesses. I failed businesses. I was making YouTube money because I made YouTube videos because the extra $200 a month was going to move the needle and things like that. And so, I mean, great. I'm not rubbing it in people's faces when I say how much money I make or what my income is. But when I had debt, before I got married, I owned a CrossFit gym. I was making like $1,000 a month when I first started my debt-free journey. And I was like, I think if anything, trying to get out of debt is going to it made me find places that I could save money. It made me find places that I could generate more income. It made me downsize my life because I started selling things I didn't really need. I sold a car and like all these, I did all of that cliche things. But Jay, it seemed in the moment, I thought I was being ridiculous. My friends told me I'm crazy, but man, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Well,
and it really does.
On this, one thing I wanted to mention is that you and I both figured this out on our journeys through the building our main financial foundation and building wealth and paying off debts. Is that when you start this journey, it seems a bit overwhelming at first, especially if you have a very tall mountain to climb. You look at this top, you're standing at the base of the mountain and you're looking up, and maybe you have $150,000 in consumer debt, not including your mortgage. Like Brad and I now are talking strictly about like credit card, car loan, medical debt, student loans, all that. Let's say you're standing at the base, you're looking up, and you're like, how in the hell am I going to do this? I think the best part about this is just taking it one step at a time. Now, you're never going to climb the mountain if you never start. But if you do take one step, learn as you go, the benefit that Brad and I both noticed is while you're on this journey, somehow magically, now obviously things can happen, but somehow magically your income starts just to go up. Either opportunities present themselves or you're a little bit better off financially and you get to take maybe a little bit of a bigger risk to do something that may increase your income or switch a job, or just like all these opportunities start happening whenever you're taking yourself a little bit more serious financially. And it's like these doors start to open. Can't really explain it, but as you focus more on this every single day, you'll start to see more opportunities arise. And I'm always a big believer in being a little bit above average, right? Like if you take the extra steps, because like let's be honest, most people in life just they want to just like kind of get by, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. If you are just if you're listening and you just like, hey man, I just want to pay my bills and I want to have like a fun life and like be good with it, like that's fine. But if you go just a little bit above average, your head like pokes out of the clouds and you see all this like, and you'll meet other people who are doing that same thing, but it's almost like these opportunities present themselves whenever you put yourself in that predicament. Yeah. And then you also, you start talking to different people. You find yourself going to meet different people who are kind of like-minded like you are. And then you're like, oh, wait, you do this? Wait, this is available to do this out there? Like, it's just, it's such a cool experience to go through. And you can start this at any age too. Like if you're 45 listening, if you're 50 listening, like don't think it's too late to get started. No. Like if anything, you're hurting yourself even more by not starting yesterday.
Yeah.
You're just kicking the can down the road even more.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got debt free when I was 40.
Yeah. There you go.
And
look how fast you went from, what are you now? 43. Well, look what your wealth has done over the past 3 years.
It's not right.
It's crazy.
It almost doesn't seem right. And especially too, and we can get into this, the automation part of it. Like most of my investments are just automated. And, and if you've noticed, for anybody listening, we've been talking about this 15 minutes. We haven't talked about investing once because I think there's a lot of people too that want to put that cart before the horse. Yes. And back to the debt thing too. And something you mentioned, you can only cut your lifestyle. Cause this is some things people say like, Brad, I don't have an expensive iPhone because, oh God, nothing worse than somebody being like, I can't make it. And they're telling me that from their $3,000 iPhone that they just got. But like, there are some people that I know have cut it as thin as possible. You can only cut your living expenses by so much. You got to live, you got to eat, you got to feed the kids, you got to put clothes on their back, but your income really is. And especially now in a day and age, and it sounds so cliche, but there's just an endless amount of ways to make a couple dollars on the internet or
Hmm.
whatever, or it's like you can do that. So when I say this, when I talk about budgeting, I am not talking about cutting your expenses to the point where like you're living in a life of deprivation. But I think it's very, very important to start writing down how much money you spend every single month
That's good.
because it will open your eyes to inefficiencies and it will let you know where you can cut back even a little bit. Now, maybe you've been doing it. Maybe you've been budgeting. You're like, Finn, I got this thing as low
Hmm.
as it possibly can go. But I think early on, and that's one amazing thing that Dave Ramsey did for me was taught me how to budget. And I mean, at this point in my career of investing and money, like I can't honestly say that I budget still every single month, but I definitely do it quarterly just to make sure things, or if the bank account just seems a little bit weird, it's generally because, we have to avoid lifestyle creep and things like that. As our incomes go up, we want to make sure that we stay grounded. But I think the first step is like, before you worry about when or how long it's going to take you to pay off your debts, before you worry about if you should be debt snowballing or debt avalanching, I think you should have a budget of here's how much money I have coming in, here's how much money I have going out. Because if you don't know how much money you have to work with to pay off debt, then it doesn't really like if you're spending more than you're making, you're spinning your wheels trying to pay off debt.
Yep.
You need to first figure out a way that you can be in excess of income versus liabilities at the end of every single month. And that's the first place I think you should start.
Preach.
Yeah. I mean, what's like, at what level do you think, and because we can get to the investing piece and
That's yeah. It's up to you. I mean,
well, no,
I,
but I mean, at what point, because this is a huge debate on the internet and something that we've disagreed with,
mhm.
in times where at what point is it all in paying off debts versus maybe investing a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, just for what I did that I'm glad I did is like I always invested in retirement.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people nowadays like don't like investing in a 401k or an IRA or whatever because they're like, you need access to that money now, blah 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 blah. Like I don't I mean cool, like I get it. Like I do. I get that being able to
Right.
use that money now, but I like the tax advantages that come with those accounts. Now I understand the government can change that any second, but for right now, that's what I'm given. So to answer your question, I like investing at least like 5% in retirement.
Okay.
And maybe if I had a lot of credit card debt, I would hold off on that
Right.
retirement and I'd flush everything into the credit card debt because when you're thinking 25% interest, you're just hurting yourself by putting money into retirement. I
Right.
mean, you're not going to see consecutive years of 25% return on your money.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. Maybe 1 or 2 years here and there, but so for me, if I had a high interest debt like that, like I would be attacking that first. Once that was gone and I got that to zero, and then maybe I have like student loans and a car payment, everything around like the 3 to 6 range percent. That's probably when I start putting money in retirement while still attacking the debt. So I would have to figure out how much can I afford to put into retirement. Maybe it's 1%, but at least you're putting in something.
Hmm.
And then everything else I have after I pay my bills and live my hopefully like reduced lifestyle while I'm paying off this debt, then I would put everything else towards those debt payments. And then I would probably go with the highest interest rate first.
Yeah. The people that I talk to at work, you hear so many times, like, I can't, I'm like, did you open up your 403B yet? And they're like, no, I'm still trying, I'm saving for a wedding. And I'm like, even just to get the account set up and put $10 a paycheck
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
like that's at least something. And I think my position is I'm still for company matches. If you're in the private sector and you have a
Yeah,
401k with a
I forgot
company
to mention
match,
that. Yep.
yeah, like I think to me, if I had a lot of debt, I would still, because that's free money at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the Roth while investing now, which I wasn't early on, mostly because I see now having a Roth for as many years as I have, the time factor, you can't go back and make up those years, and just the tax free capital gains and what that's going to be. And the benefits of giving it to a beneficiary. You give it to your spouse and it becomes theirs. Like I'm a big, huge fan of the Roth and the backdoor Roth. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, I still think that you should be paying off debt because I mean, we used when the market corrected during COVID a little bit, where if you would have been investing over a 3-year period, you would have had the exact same amount of money. Like the markets came back to the previous 3-year high, where if you would have been investing, you would have had the same amount of money and you would have still had debt. Where if you would have been paying off your debt, you'd be in the exact same market conditions as somebody else entering now and you wouldn't have any debt. So it's like, yeah, you got to get rid of it, especially anything over 6%. Like your hair's on fire, you got to go. Dave Ramsey said your hair's on fire over 6% and you got to do it. I do like the idea. I'm not really a big fan of politicians, but I have heard talk, like I'm very against student loan forgiveness. And I know that's a debatable topic and we won't need to go into it too much, but I did hear recently that they're thinking about like capping credit cards at 10%.
I heard that.
I'm for that.
I'm for that too.
I'm not for loan forgiveness. I think you made your bed, you should lay in it. But
I agree.
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go.
Here's my thing on the credit card cap is if there's going to be a credit card cap on interest, I don't want people to take that as an initiative to spend more.
Yes.
You know, like
I'm going to screw myself, but I'm not going to fuck myself.
Yeah. Like
exactly. Yeah.
You can't. So then that worries me because like if we look at credit card debt right now, dude, it's at all-time highs.
You know that better than me. Yeah, you make videos on that stuff.
It is we are right now as a country $1.14 trillion in credit card debt.
And what do we have? And what do we have? Like 120 million people in this. How many people are in the country?
I don't know off the top of my head, but
or the election was just like what 60 million votes each, so that's 120. You double that, maybe there's like 300 million people in this country, and
you have to take out kids, so don't account for kids, dude. That's unreal, man.
Yeah,
that's scary stuff, though. But here's what I talk about on my channel is with the scenarios. Like, I'm not surprised to see that one bit because one, right now is one of not in history, but like with the cost of living versus what wages are right now is one of the toughest times to like get by with everything.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the situation that you're getting by, like that's tough right now because prices continue to creep up over and over again. And now we're seeing a little bit of a cool off in inflation, but October CPI report came out and it was the first time CPI has risen since March. If you go back in the 70s, if you look at a chart of CPI or the inflation data, the 70s, it could look pretty similar to what we're seeing now. Now, the Feds handled things a little bit differently. Times were a little different back then. So there's different factors to apply to that why this scenario may not happen. But when you go back and look at this chart in the 70s, I put it in my recent video on YouTube. So they had inflation spike in like 1976. I'm going off the top of my head here, so don't quote me on this. So 1976, inflation peaked, and then it started creeping back down like we're at now. And then you see this little turnaround where it popped back up like a month later. Like, it went down consecutively for like 4 or 5 months, maybe a couple years. I don't remember. I can't remember. I wish I had the chart pulled up. Anyways, the moral of the story is inflation peaked, came back down significantly. Inflation roared its head again and came back even higher than what it was at the highest point. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because as we all know, history repeats itself. Again, there's different factors back then than what we're facing now. What worries me is if we saw that again. Like, what happens if we see a CPI report come out next month or like 2 months, 3 months down the road, and it's back in like the 4s? Dude, the whole world would flip shit. Wouldn't it? Because like, what could you imagine inflation starting to come back to 4%, 5%, 6%, 7%, 8%. And we're going through this shit right now. Like that would not be good. Now I'm not calling that's going to happen.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, I do like looking at history. I like looking at what's happened before. I like looking at how people handled times back then. And then when you look at the data, you're like, this is kind of like, it's kind of scary if this would happen again right now. Or like banks start failing because interest rates creep up and they're going to continue to stay higher. There could be a mess coming. Again, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here. I hope we can keep seeing this great times we're living in as investors, but I also wouldn't mind a pullback,
Yeah. What do you think even if it's realistic or not, what's the fix to credit card debt? If it's not does a 10% cap help it? Or would it be better if, because I agree with you 100%, the lower you make it, just like mortgages, like when mortgages
Yeah.
got to 2%, people are like, I don't need to pay that back. It's
That-
2%. You know,
That's
like
it.
if we made, even if we were said, you know, we're going to make like what they did with COVID, or we're going to make it 0% interest for a year. The amount of people that when that happened during COVID on student loans and stuff, they were like, sweet, I don't have to make my student
Yeah.
loans for a year. When it's like, shit, this is the time where you should be putting triple the amount because that's when you're going to knock down your principal. Is there a fix? Like, should we, because it wouldn't be great for the economy, I think, if we got rid of credit cards altogether, or the people that use them responsibly, if that's a thing. But what is the fix? Is there a fix to that $1 trillion credit card debt? Should we limit the people that can get, is it too easy for people to get credit cards? Like, what's the major fundamental problem?
Bro, that's a tough question, man.
I know. I like those tough ones for you.
Gosh dang, because like I honestly, like, I'm gonna say this, I don't know.
Would
I
you,
really don't. Like,
would you be would you vote for getting rid of credit cards altogether? You could not pay on
So-
credit.
I think that would fix prices.
Okay.
I think prices are inflated right now because people have so much access to capital that's not theirs.
Kind of like with student loans. People can
Yes.
pay 80 grand a year for college because they're really not paying 80 grand a year for college.
Imagine what would happen to college prices if you couldn't take out student loans.
They would have supply and
They
demand.
would
They would
have-
have to tumble.
They would have to come down significantly.
And if small brained people like you and I can understand that, why hasn't it happened?
Because companies and the big money doesn't want that to happen because that would affect their bottom dollar and bottom
Yeah.
line big time, and revenue and profits and everything else. I mean, it's all money based. Like,
Yeah.
when you give the average individual access to capital that they don't have to go, because like, think about this, the average individual is a consumer.
Right.
The average individual is not an investor.
Correct.
So when they see access to additional capital, what do they go do with it? They go spend it. So like, if you don't have access to additional capital, what's going to happen is people aren't going to spend as much because they don't have the money to spend.
right.
You know, like, ultimately, yes, it would solve the problem, but there's no way U.S. corporations would let that happen.
We are not ready for that. That's too big of a. That's too drastic of a step. Maybe
I mean,
the
I would-
10%
I-
cap is a step in the right direction.
I would love it. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm all for that because it makes people have to look at their money they have coming in. Because right now, when you have credit cards, like, people use credit cards as emergency funds, bro.
Then, oh god,
That's the craziest thing. I hear it all the time in my comment section, like, oh, my credit card's for my emergency. I'm like, no, go save up 10 grand and just sit it in an account and never touch it again. But there's people who can't do that.
I know, and it's a shame, and they said it's a bigger shame to the people that just aren't aware. Like, how many people have you ever talked to in your
That's
life
so
with,
true.
with student loans and I've seen them in the videos when you're doing reaction videos of like people that have been paying off their student loans for 10 years and their principal has gone down like $300.
Or the balance has gone up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, before we digress, like this goes to the point of like, you avoid all these, like, we can joke and have these conversations because we just eliminated that risk from our life by paying off debt.
Yeah, and I still use credit cards too. Like, fully transparent. I use them, but I use them for points. Actually, I use the.
I don't even have a debit card
I have a debit card, but
because I use it for security of purchases too.
for sure, absolutely. That's why I use my credit card all the time as well. But
Yeah.
for my credit card, we have the Fidelity card. It's free, no annual payment, and we get basically the money that we use is just cash. I think it's like 5% cash back or something like that, and they automatically deposit that cash into my brokerage account every month.
Oh, I need that. I just switched to Fido.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, depending on how much you spend, like it's.
Well,
it
that's
buys
why
me-
I have an Amazon card that gives like 3% cash back because we use Amazon so much. It's like
Yeah, Amazon's good.
3% back. It's like I'm saving 3% on all my purchases on Amazon. But then again, Jay, this justification
Yep,
is
that's it.
what people do,
Yeah.
and they do it in a bad situation sometimes. And I mean, I probably buy things on Amazon I shouldn't, but
Same.
I worked really hard to pay off my debts, so now I can be a little bit more spendy if I need to
Right.
from time to time. And so the people that have paid off debts, they're kind of there. And
Hey, I want to say there's
Go,
something I
go.
wanted to say something about the credit card. I forgot. So credit cards were invented, I think, in like the 40s, 50s, maybe. I don't quote me on that. I think they were 40s or 50s. The first like credit card came out. I could look it up, or Brad, if you could look it up while I'm talking, like when was the first credit card invented or whatever. But the point I'm making with this is that beforehand, you didn't have to worry about like you had your money that you spent, right? So I think a lot of the times we're having also such high inflation is because kind of this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier is people are able to spend more because they have access to this money that basically is just borrowed money to them, and they continue to do it year over year over year. So this goes back to what you were saying. You find it?
Yeah, it was in 1950, Frank McNamara. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
1950. So I was close.
February of 1950. The Dinners Club card was launched in February 1950 in New York
Okay.
City.
So I have made this argument on videos before as to maybe why we haven't seen a massive decline or like like almost like a Great Depression we saw in
Hmm.
the 19 what was it 30s or the 1920s. No, it was Roaring 20s. Depression happened in 30s, I think. Oh God, I always get my dates mixed up. Anyways, you guys get the point I'm making here. I think we haven't seen something that severe yet because of having access to this capital that's not technically ours. Because like based
Yeah.
on time events, the depression happened because people legit, well, a lot of the depression happened because people were taking out margin in the stock market. And this was before they had, automatic stops whenever the market started collapsing.
Yep.
People were literally getting rug pulled with all the margin they had invested, which Brad, actually, Brad, I think you do, but I don't use margin in the stock market, but I leverage on real estate. But people were getting rug pulled left and right because the market kept tanking in the depression. They had all this money on margin in the stock market. And when you have margin, you're literally having to sell investments and then continuously losing the money once that investments have been sold to cover that margin. And if you can't cover the margin, which I think that happened to a few of them back then you got companies starting to collapse, and it's a complete disaster. So one thing that I've kind of thought about, and I'm no economist or anything like that, so people out there may be smarter than that on my end may not agree with me, but I think there's maybe a theory around the credit cards being here that with credit cards almost like stabilizing our economy to continue to go higher because we can continue to fund capital into our economy to where in the depression they didn't have that. Like once the money was gone, it was gone.
Do you
Like once
think
people go ahead.
do you think there's an equal amount of people using credit cards, quote unquote, responsibly as there are irresponsibly? We just don't hear about the responsible people.
That's a good question.
Like somebody like you and I, who I would argue
Yeah.
use credit cards responsibly, or all the businessmen and women that I know that
Yep.
use it for business or things like that. Would you say it's 50-50 or more like 70-30? Like irresponsibly 70% and maybe 30% of us are using them responsibly.
That's tough.
Or is that not even a metric? The
I
point
would
I'm
like
making is like it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all bad.
for
I
sure.
really think there's for like that I mentioned the protection of purchases and being able to
Hmm.
call a credit card and be like this is fraud, and they take care of it, or the points and people that know how to use the points. We know our buddy John Scholler has been traveling the world on credit card
Yeah.
points for a very long time, and so I just if I'm not saying it with Dave Ramsey, it was like cut up all your credit cards, and then a couple years later, Tara's like, "Why did we do that?"
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know my answer. Like I would give the benefit of the doubt to the American people and be like,
Mhm.
hopefully it's 50-50, hopefully
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
half of
yeah.
us out there that aren't spending and living off credit card debt. But yeah, I have no idea, man. And I think a lot of that, I think maybe some of that trillions of dollars I mentioned in credit card debt is probably a lot of it is business too.
Right.
So that's a little different, but still, when it comes to business though, here's where I think a lot of people get things mixed up. It's like, excuse me, you always hear like, oh, it's a tax write-off. Oh, it's a tax write-off. I'm like, guys, like
Oh, we're getting down a
that
rabbit
is,
hole now.
I know, but I'm like, that is still money coming out of your pocket.
Yep.
It's just from your business. Like,
It's like
yes,
when
I
your
understand.
spouse comes home and says it was on sale, I had to buy it.
That's it. It's the same thing. Like, I get it. Like, you get the
Black
tax
Friday.
write-off.
Black
Yeah, I
Friday.
know.
Oh my
But
God.
it's still money coming out of your pocket. Why wouldn't you want your Because here's the other thing. If you try to go get a loan for a house or something and you have to use your income from your business, if you're not showing much profit because you wrote everything off, you're not going to be able to get a loan.
Didn't that burn you a little bit?
It did. One year I tried to write off a lot more than I probably should have.
Right.
And it messed with me because like I had a decline in my revenue.
In your income.
Yep,
Yeah, but I mean, you
because of
use
that.
legal loopholes, right? You were not creating tax fraud,
No,
but
I'm not right.
you really dove into all of the possible ways to write off expenses, and
It was that, and also I didn't make as much that year either.
yeah,
It was like a combination of two things that just kind of like screwed me.
and you made a lot of money, but you had a lot of expenses, and then when the bank was like, "Well, you had a lot of expenses, you didn't make a lot of money," and you're like, "Ah, I didn't really think about it like that."
Well, yeah, and my profits decline in my business. So like obviously banks don't like to see that. Even it doesn't matter if you have write-offs or not. So
Right.
yeah, that kind of sucked. So it's got to be careful out there with that. If you
On
if
the
you want to need to get a loan for an investment property or a mortgage or whatever.
on the investment side, before we get out of here, just so I can call this episode
Yeah.
"The Simple Path to Wealth," are you? Because here's another place that we kind of differ. You're still pretty much an index fund guy, but you probably invest in stocks
Yeah.
and real estate at a greater percent. 0% real estate, and we're gonna do an episode on hard money, right? You're gonna talk to Bryce, and we'll get him on here.
Yep.
But I still am a large majority, like 90% plus is VTI still for me. And I still think that VTI for life and maybe like 10%. I like to day trade and I like to trade options and have some fun with that. But where are you on the percentage of like index fund for life kind of guy?
So I would say majority of the money I have in the stock market is in ETFs.
Okay.
So all of my retirement accounts I have in VTI. So all the money I have in my wife's account, my account, stuff like that is in VTI.
Okay.
My taxable brokerage, my long-term taxable brokerage, I have set up a little different. I have it pulled up right now. I'm looking at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 ETFs that make up that portfolio.
Mhm.
And all of them are based on different percentages because I have it automatically investing every month.
Is that M1? Are you in M1 still?
It's no Fidelity.
Oh, Fidelity. Okay.
Yep. So I have SMH, SCHD, VOO, QQQM, VNQ, VXUS. Those are my ETFs that make up that portfolio. I put a certain percentage in each one of those every single month at the first of the month, and I don't really look at it.
Yeah.
And then I have my Robinhood portfolio that is kind of my risky portfolio. I do a lot of options trading in there. I buy leaps, I sell calls, I sell puts. I have like my SoFi shares are in there still. I have I have a few companies like Google, and then I started picking up some Amazon stuff recently. And then I try not to talk too much about my personal stocks anymore because I hate how people get
Yes.
what's the word I'm looking for?
They just give unsolicited advice.
Well, no, not that. I mean, I'm talking about I don't like the fact that people see me investing in something and then they feel comfortable and it's almost like I'm holding their hand to invest with it. So that's one of the main reasons why I stopped investing in stocks or stopped talking about investing in stocks on YouTube is because I just felt
Because we've had some losers.
Oh yeah, we've definitely had some losers, and then people are like, "Oh well, I did this because of you," and I'm just like, I don't know.
Right.
Now I'll still mention stocks I'm buying. It's just I don't necessarily know if I like showing like
The analysis and breakdown of why.
yeah, like because I can be wrong.
Oh, dude, I was wrong with Vuzi.
Yeah, and what was probably my biggest one? I had some stupid penny stock I was talking about.
I mean, we've all. I mean, and that's also a little bit of YouTube syndrome too. But
oh, for sure. I mean, and that's so like I just tried to like.
But where does risk come in? Like
yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm getting like
but it doesn't need to be like. I think the point that I'm trying to make is there is a place for risk. There's a place for asymmetric bets. There is a place for a little bit of crypto if you want. There's a little place for a little bit of day trading and options if you want.
For sure.
I don't think. And because going to the manic side, and this goes to budgeting and getting your life to next to nothing where you feel deprived.
Yeah.
Like there is nuance. It doesn't have to be hot and cold. You are allowed to YOLO
For
with,
sure.
frankly, any percentage of your money that you want. But I think safely you're allowed to. Some people like classic cars. Some people like to go to Vegas and play blackjack. Some people like expensive whiskeys. They like to play golf. They're car people. Like if you find what makes you happy with 10% of your money, go for it.
Yeah, and
You hate day trading, but like I'm sitting right here looking at my watch, like, oh my God, the market's been over 15 minutes. I want to get in and play. Like that's totally okay.
yep. Yeah, I mean that's my thing is like I don't necessarily I think operate off percentages per se, besides maybe my Bitcoin ownership is what I kind of keep an eye on. Everything else I kind of just roughly look because I track my net worth every single month.
Mhm.
So I know what my amounts are in each account and my retirement and real estate. And I would say I'm probably a little heavy right now on the Robinhood account, but that's just because the market's been climbing so high recently.
Yeah.
And I have taken some profits recently too. And I've missed out on from taking profits too soon, but I don't care. Like
Yeah.
guaranteed money, I'll take, especially when it's in my risky account. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I can't answer like based on percentages, but what I try to do generally is just like I keep an eye on my accounts. And I'm like, okay, this Robinhood account is getting a little high. Like I need to start putting more into the Fidelity or whatever. So then I'll take a big chunk and I'll just transfer one day money into the Fidelity account and I'll just go buy all my ETFs just to like kind of bump up that account here.
Mhm.
And I'll probably do that here honestly pretty soon. So
Should everybody be tracking their net worth?
I think so, yeah. I think it's just as important as creating a budget. Now, I think it's more on the wealth generation side that it's going to benefit you, but dude, I've religiously tracked I can open my
You've
I'll
been.
open my spreadsheet.
How long have you been doing it monthly?
Yep,
'Cause
I'm
didn't you
about
used to do it yearly? I do it yearly now at
no,
this point.
I've done it monthly since I started.
Oh wow.
So let me pull this up here. Now I'm not going to share my net worth because I just don't feel comfortable doing that. But um, so July of 2016 is when I
Wow.
started this spreadsheet, and I can tell you how much my net worth has grown. I'm fine doing that. So if I do a quick calculation here, give me 1 second.
Because I think that is the good thing about doing it is in those times where it's getting dark and you feel like that mound's getting too high. Because here's the thing: when you're paying off debt, you don't realize that paying off debt is the only way to guarantee an increase in your net worth. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of times my debt-free journey took like 4 years, and there were times where I was thinking to myself, "Oh my God, I'm spinning my wheels here. Nothing feels like it's going down." But then when I got to my monthly net worth sheet and I saw that monthly net worth increasing, I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, it feels like I'm not really doing anything, but at the end of the day, I am doing something. So I think if you're in a debt free journey, I think you should track your net worth, however you're going to do, because people are going to debate it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you shouldn't use your cars or you shouldn't use your house. Just be consistent with whatever you
Yep.
want to do so
For
that
sure.
as long as that consistency goes through, and I think the only reason that I advocate for, showing your net worth or doing it every single month when you're
Hmm.
paying off your debt is it will help you with the psychological of maybe you're not investing. So your investment portfolio is maybe not going up, but your net worth is still going up because you're paying down debts.
Yeah.
How much is, percentage of how much has gone up
Almost 2,000%
in 8 years?
since 2016. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And I
And
think a lot, and
and in
honestly,
hockey
like,
sticks, whoop,
yep, I have a chart that shows it.
the first 100K is the hardest.
That is the hardest. But it's once you get there, it's such an amazing goal. And
And then when you,
and
go
Brad
ahead,
and I always say, congratulate yourself. Like, and go,
small wins.
go celebrate that. Like, take a trip. Like, I remember whenever, Lindsay and I would hit milestones in the net worth, like, we'd go to Mexico just for the hell of it and be like, hey, let's take 3 grand, $3,500, and we're going to go stay 4 or 5 nights in Mexico and just celebrate us killing it right now.
Yeah, because the finish line isn't debt freedom. Like
Right.
maybe you have 5 different debts, and you get rid of the car payment.
Yep.
Celebrate that.
Yep.
Celebrate your wins. Pat yourself on the back, because especially for those people that are going to be doing it for a long time. And I don't know how much mine has gone up percentage wise, but like I said, I know that when I was 36 years old, I had and this is because this is what I built my channel on. My net worth was minus $186,000 at 36 years old. And at that time, I owned a house, a car, I had a full-time job, and my net worth was minus that. And I've turned it around to
Dude, you massively have made it. It's so awesome to hear
yeah,
that.
and the amount of people that I've talked to that have done the same, and the longer it goes on, the more insane it gets. Like the first 100 is amazing, but shit gets weird at 500K. When you get
Hmm.
to 500K, you start looking at your accounts quarterly, and you're like, you think there's a money glitch.
Yeah,
You're like, how did this freaking happen? You know,
it's crazy, dude.
pay off your debts.
That's where it starts.
Just pay off your debts.
Like if
Does
you don't know, if you're overwhelmed right now listening to this, or you're like, "Ah, I just want to get better with money,
pay off your debts.
put more money towards your debts. That's
Pay
the
off.
best thing you can do. Yep.
Pay, say no to Friendsgiving. Don't go out this Thanksgiving Eve. You know, talk to your talk to the person you're dating and say, hey, listen, I know Christmas is a big deal, but I want to be with you for a really, really long time. And I think
Hmm.
fixing our money and have those tough conversations. Because if you're dating somebody that's like, no, F that, you need to get me a diamond earrings for Christmas this year because we've been dating for 3 years, red
Yikes.
flags.
Yikes. Big red flags.
Red flag. Me and my wife are married 10 years this next week, and we haven't got each other a Christmas present in 12 years. So,
Yeah, me and Lindsay don't really shop for each other either. We just
no,
kind of like we know like Lindsay does most of the Christmas shopping anyways, but she knows to take care of the kids, and then her and I take care of each other throughout the year. You
exactly.
know, we do little gifts, little
Right.
things here or there, and if her and I want to go do something fun, we'll go do something fun. We'll spend a couple, a few $100, and like we
Bouquet of
don't
flowers
have
goes a long way every once in a while.
yeah, so I haven't told Lindsay yet, but I scheduled us for a massage in 2 weeks.
She doesn't listen to
Uh,
the podcast.
she doesn't, so she'll never know. So like I can't wait to like kind of take her out on a little lunch date and then be like, all right, it's fun. And I'm like, oh wait, let's go get massages. Like little things like that, dude. It's fun.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know what's coming, so it's
Those
cool.
are the beauties of debt free living.
Yep,
Again,
absolutely, man.
investing doesn't matter.
Yep.
The wheel strategy doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Day trading, real estate, it doesn't matter. When you are debt free, things just seem to sort themselves out.
So nice, dude.
It's so simple.
Yep.
Debt free.
I'll never go back to being in debt. I
No.
mean, besides for real estate, but as far as consumer debt goes, I'll never do it again, ever.
Yeah. And when you pay off debts, you start saving money at an incredible rate. Like, cause I remember when I got debt free, I'm like, man, if my car breaks, a like $6,000 car, then you realize, wow, you can invest that money for 2, 3 years. I'm liquid. I can go buy a car if I need to.
Or even that, and on the other side, on the flip side of that is if you don't have any debt, you can change your lifestyle drastically in case something crazy happens. Like
Yeah.
one of your, let's say your significant other loses their job. Okay, hey, our debt's paid off, so now we just got to pull back our living lifestyle a little bit, and we'll make it through.
Yeah.
Maybe both of you guys lose your job, but you got an emergency fund and no debt payments going out. All right, we'll make it through. It's
Mhm.
gonna be tough. It's gonna be
It's gonna,
hard. We're gonna
yeah.
be living on rice and beans or ramen noodles, whatever your cup of tea is. But until you can figure out how you're going to generate that next paycheck, then there's just so many benefits that come with being completely debt free.
It's, I mean, and it sounds cliche when we talk about it. And it's one of those things like falling in love or having a kid. You just got to do it to really understand it.
And the other thing too, right now, man, is like times okay. Like I get like times are tough when it comes to cost of living and whatnot, but like for the most part, times have been pretty easy going the past
Yes.
4 to 5 years. But we haven't had a major recession in a while,
A long time.
and it may be another 10 years before we have one. I don't know, but
And I don't want to give tough love, but like we are not victims. And I don't support like victim mentality.
yeah,
Like
me neither.
you're gonna go through shitty times
Yep.
sometimes, and we have too. But that's when you lean on the people closest to you, and that's we're lucky we had each other
Yeah.
during our highs and our lows. During times when you didn't know if you were going to be able to buy a house because YouTube was down or whatnot. Like
Yep.
we got each other through it, and you need those people in your life. But like we're not victims. Nobody is. And if you listen to the podcast, I'm sorry if it's tough love. Like barring an unusual circumstance, or something crazy that's an outlier, most of us were not victims. And as soon as you start believing you are not a victim, I think things get a little bit easier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also the last thing I wanted to mention is with this us not having a recession lately is times have been generally okay. Like everyone has jobs, money's
Mhm.
coming in, But the one question you got to think about yourself, and I want to end this podcast with this because this is where it hits home. Will you be able to make it if we have a major recession and unemployment spikes, and let's say you or your spouse or somebody loses a job, and you don't have enough money coming in to pay the bills? Like, that's what should be your motivation now, because I feel like we're on this like tipping stone of something crazy happening, and I hate to keep bringing this back up, and it could be, like I said, 10 more years.
You're just saying be prepared. That's all you're saying.
That's it.
Be prepared.
Be prepared for the tough times ahead,
Yes.
because it's not always gonna be pretty.
Set an insurance policy on yourself. That's all it
Nailed
is.
it. You
Right?
nailed
Like
it.
I don't pay insurance because I think I'm going to have a flood. I pay for insurance in case I have a flood. So
Preach.
pay off your debts, not because the world is going to crash and burn financially, but if it does, you'll soften the blow.
Boom.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. 2 weeks in a row. We're going to keep it, like Jay said, maybe more realistically bi-weekly.
Yeah.
But you know me, I'm a all in or nothing. So I'm gonna push for the every week. But going into the holidays, it may be tough. But we definitely want to get this one out again quick, just to let you know that wasn't a one and done, because we've done the one and done now, I think 3 times.
I know.
So it wasn't a one and done. We're gonna make it happen. I
can make bi-weekly happen. I'll say that right now. I can make that for sure happen.
I have off from school through the holidays. Like, we'll get some stuff during the day done, and we're back. So
Nice.
So get over to Instagram, Average Money Podcast, and leave us DMs, questions that you might have or topics you want us to talk about on the podcast. And then
Let's
maybe
throw
for
up
the
voice.
yeah, we'll try and
link
get that
again.
going, and we'll put that in the description. Hey, leave a voicemail. And like I said, we'll I don't know if you were around for that time when we were doing voicemails, but it was always a good time.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah. All right, guys, take it easy. We'll catch you next time.